Hi there. Thanks so much for coming back to the channel. Today is my first video podcast, and I am really excited to welcome someone who has actually been a student of mine, but I consider her a friend and a colleague, and someone who has a passion for choral singing, especially in the community realm. It is my friend, Sandra Files. Hi, Sandra.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to have you. And Sandra is starting a new choir in a festival model. So today we're going to talk about that and give some ideas for how you might start your own festival choir. So here we go.
So this all began back in 2004.
2004.
I attended my first PMEA Song Fest event, and that was one of those like core defining memories for me walking into the Bucknell University choir room. I remember the song we were singing, where I was sitting. And it choral music just came alive for me in that moment. And so that all through middle school and high school, I continued doing these festivals. And then you get to college, you enter the workforce, and that's not really a thing. And um, in my work as a choral conductor, I had been talking to other adults who had similar experiences, and people had overheard us talking about that and said, "Oh man, I didn't discover singing until I was an adult, so I never got to have that." And that was 5 or 6 years ago, and that little light bulb just went off. And then kind of slowly it's germinated and grown. And through some research projects that I did, I discovered that there is quite a steep drop off, yeah, even from people who do music all the way through college. And this mimicking the same format of those programs I did a middle and high school, where you prepare the music on your own, you come together for one day, you rehearse, you perform, you go home. Seemed like it could help fill that gap for people.
Have you seen anybody else model this? Or did you just sort of just shoot in the dark, let me try this and see?
Yeah, I did some research. I haven't found any, and this isn't to say it doesn't exist, but I wasn't able to find an ensemble that had no weekly rehearsal commitments, was just truly a single day event, didn't require an audition, but provided the music in advance, that was SATB and its own 501(c)(3), its own nonprofit organization. So,
Yeah,
um,
I have a choir just like that. So I put
yes.
on my one day choir. The difference is that we are sponsored by the institution where I work. So we've not gone through this 501(c)(3) business. And that's kind of where, um, this conversation precipitated because the way that you're doing this seems to be in it's a much better reach for folks that, aren't like me, who just happen to have the immense blessing of being somewhere that would support an endeavor like this. So talk to me about you've been involved with community organizations because you're not currently a school teacher, you're not currently teaching in higher ed, right? So you have a another day job,
Mhm.
right? And this, but you've been all along pretty much participating in community ensembles. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah, I've been an artistic director of a non-auditioned adult community choir for the last 5 years, and I was the accompanist with that group for 5 years prior. So it's been a very large part of my adulthood. Um,
So how
and
did your experience in the community ensemble, I say did it have any impetus for you starting this other group on your own?
yeah, absolutely. That ensemble is my biggest inspiration in doing this. Something that just really blows me away is how healing amateur musicianship is for this population. And we are truly a multi-generational choir, 18 through 90, a pretty even age distribution. which feels uh, not common, but like a blessing. And just hearing the stories of people who come to singing for the first time in their lives after a traumatic event or a major life change, and they just need stability. They need a way to care for themselves, to connect with other people. And I'm hoping to find out many people who also could benefit from that, who have the background and the skills to participate in a choir, but are prevented from the time commitment of 2.5 hours once a week, which is pretty steep.
Does the Harmonia Festival Choir have any connection to this other choir?
No, it's we share a board member, but um, not in any sort of official capacity. We're not funded or sponsored by any sort of governing organization. It's truly from the ground up, independent.
So, how did you figure out what steps were even necessary to get something like this off the ground? Because, like you said, there's really not a lot of, if, I'm sure there are models somewhere, but they are few and far between, obviously, because you weren't able to seek any out necessarily to help you in this process.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. A great exploratory step was talking to you about your choir and kind of figuring out where the support provided by your institution, how we could fill that gap. So it sounds silly, but I started by Googling how to start a 501c3. And Chorus Connection has a really fantastic blog, and they had a very comprehensive post. And I just started going down the steps, and that sounds easier than it was. A lot of those steps are, download and fill out this very extensive, IRS form. But it kind of demystified the steps enough that then when I started reaching out to people to assemble a board, we kind of had an idea of who would take on what chunk. So it felt less overwhelming. We were communicating very frequently. I had reached out to some friends and colleagues in the area who had been more involved in that process with the groups that they work with, and had gotten some feedback, like things like seeking insurance. I have a colleague who was very helpful with talking me through her process and relying on community, but also a lot of it was just taking our time, not rushing into it, quadruple checking every step, and just slowly working through the steps.
Did you have the board already set in place before you started the paperwork for the 501c3? You,
Yes.
now, were you strategic in seeking out certain people, knowing their different experiences and things like that?
Yes. There's that old adage, don't work with your friends. I threw that right out the window. um, I decided up front, this truly is my baby. It's my passion project. It touches the core of everything I care about. And I really wanted to assemble a team that I could fully trust with it. And so I'm very lucky to have friends and colleagues turned friends that just had skill sets that interacted really well to kind of cover us. So off the bat, about a year ago now, we assembled a president, a vice president, and a treasurer. And then I'm on the board in an ex officio capacity as the founder. So,
So skill sets does the president have, for example, that are meaningful to your organization?
well, I'm very lucky to have a very close friend who has a lot of development and specifically arts development experience. He's always been very much on the kind of strategic planning, fundraising side of things. And so off the bat, we were able to have a conversation last February where I said, okay, I'll do the artistic vision, and then you tell me how to make that possible. And just kind of having this mutual understanding of there are going to be times I have to veto an idea and vice versa. So yeah, trusting in that experience that he has in fundraising and planning. Um, yeah, and then we found a treasurer who has similar experience on a different board, which has been invaluable. Um, I would definitely recommend to anyone in a similar position talking to people you know who are on working boards.
Sure.
That's been really valuable. Um, and then our vice president is the vice president of the other chorus I conduct. So,
That's the shared board member, I'm assuming.
yes, yes. And she's got a really keen eye for operations. And it really felt like assembling the Avengers. Like our skill sets all just clicked together so wonderfully.
Different skill sets. Like you can't have two operations person and an accounting person. Like there's so many facets that go into all of, I mean, what I discovered because I'm a big picture type of person, so I create the big picture before I think about all the details that are necessary to actually make that big picture come to fruition. So, the first few times that we did our choir, did our choir. The first few times our choir met together to do one of these festival type formats, I was committed to feeding these people dinner. Well, I didn't think about the fact that I'm also conducting, I'm rehearsing all these people, and now I have to go get dinner put together. Like, you know, you have to think through all of those needs, but at
Yes.
least as best as you can, because you'll always forget something. So having other
Mhm.
people in those spots. One of my dear friends, Laura Morfoot, is my operations person now. She loves music, she loves the arts, but she's not, she'll tell you she's not a singer. But there are so many other things that she can lend to the choir that I just am completely clueless about, so it's so important to get people like that in your corner and to know your own limitations. You're a pretty organized person so far as I can see, but I'm sure that some of them are even filling in a few blanks that you perhaps didn't even know you had.
Yes, absolutely. We had an in-depth conversation about the logistics around getting lunch meat trays because we are also promising a meal. Um, and, the board's talking about, okay, we can assemble this many volunteers to do this. And I'm, in my mind, thinking, okay, during that time, I'll have a break so I can plan for our second rehearsal session. And so, um, yeah, those like on the ground things are so crucial to the singer's experience. And so I really value having a board that trusts me to handle their experience when I'm on the podium. And then I can trust them to advise and handle everything outside of that.
I don't know if this is your experience, but my experience has been, I mean, because I have friends and acquaintances, business colleagues that are not musicians. Um, But what I found is that they still want to participate in something like this because they see it as being part of the greater good. And
Hmm.
so the opportunity to serve in those capacities is just as meaningful to them as it is to the singers who spend their time all day singing.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
so tell me about the process for, like, did you hold auditions? Did they have to submit a tape? Was it just word of mouth, or you're just believing people that they can match pitch and things like that? What was that process?
So for this first festival, I put my faith in the people, and it was very important to me to clearly communicate the expectation ahead of time. So in the registration process, there were multiple points built in where you had to click a checkbox that says, I agree that I will be able to prepare my part. Um, in the registration process, you also see what rehearsal materials will be provided. I made practice tracks. We have PDFs. We had a Zoom Q&A. So kind of giving people the information saying, if this works for you, check this box. If we get into a place where we're limited by size, I could see considering an audition protocol, but um, For this first one, I just really wanted it to feel open and accessible to people who are willing to put the work in.
So tell me a little bit about who's singing for you, what are you singing, all of that kind of stuff.
So for this first festival, I wanted to find programming that people would recognize if they've sung in high school choirs or church choirs. Going into this, I was expecting that our choir would be made up largely from people that I know from other choral organizations in the area, but I was shocked. We were kind of aiming for 40 to 50, and we have almost 90. And we just, I think the format and the lower rehearsal commitment really spoke to people. So we ran a Facebook ad that just got a ton of traction and attention and found the right folks. And yeah,
Where are people coming from for this? Like, do you know what the longest distance is for somebody?
I think Ohio is the longest distance, and we're in Baltimore. So
Or that's somebody that just saw the Facebook ad?
that's someone I know, but there are people coming from Delaware that just saw the ad. When we placed it, we made a radius of 50 miles, and I would say that we're obviously centered around the Baltimore metropolitan area, but we have quite a few folks coming from DC, Delaware, the Eastern Shore of Maryland. There's a real good variety.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah,
Yeah, is this a treble group or is this a mixed SATB?
SATB.
Because initially you thought it might be a treble group. Am I remembering that right?
Yes, yes.
Or how
Um,
it's working out for you as far as uh, the divisions between soprano and tenor bass?
it's treble heavy, but that's to be expected. One of the things I really appreciate about my work with the other community chorus, which is the Bel Air Community Chorus, I can say the name. um, One of the things I appreciate about the Bel Air Community Chorus is that it's given me a lot of practice early in my conducting career with, okay, you have three basses this season and you have 25 altos, you got to make it work. And working with that balance, I kind of was fearing the worst when it came to our balance. We have around 10 basses and 10 tenors, and then the rest of the group is split pretty evenly. So, again, very heavy with soprano and alto, but there's also quite a bit of soprano alto divisi in some of the repertoire, which I think will kind of help with that balance. There won't be as much heaviness in one particular note. So,
Well, and this is one of those things too where it's, the first time you do anything like this is the hardest because you're shooting in the dark, so to speak. And now because there is a lot of repertoire out there that's perfect for that type of balance. Uh,
yeah,
so it's just a matter of programming with consideration to the fact that like normally with these come y'all type groups, you are treble heavy. So
yeah.
there's a body of literature that exists that will work. And you can always, if there's, if you need a little extra on the tenor, say, hey, altos, let's have you sing these four measures with the tenors. I am not a proponent of treble singers being tenors, but in that instance, for a few measures, it's not going to hurt. And it might just give them enough oomph, that they,
Hmm.
and maybe they're amazing tenors and basses and they don't need any help. There's that too.
Yeah, I've just the people I personally know, we've had some people who were music majors in their undergrad programs and have friends traveling in from out of state to join them. So then it's kind of this like blossoming word of mouth where you end up having what I think will be these pockets of really, really strong singers. Um, which, as you know, one or two voices, even in a larger group, can really make or break the balance.
So as far as your budget is concerned, did you go in already having a pretty uh a detailed budget, knowing how much you're going to spend on music, how much you're going to spend on a venue and that sort of thing? Or did you have to tailor, uh, for instance, music costs based on what you're paying for the venue and things like that?
That's a great question. We were kind of building that plane as we flew it in terms of what expenses were coming up first. So when we got to the point where we had the venue confirmed, I had my repertoire about 80% set. And I asked the board for a number per person that would be sustainable. And then I just made sure that the repertoire fell within or around that range.
And
And
thousands of people that are going to watch this video podcast, what may I ask what that number was, that per person number?
so we have about $25 of music per person.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's moving forward, I'm coincidentally interested in doing a program that will involve more public domain music um, in our September performance. But this one, it's a lot of Moses Hogan, Gwyneth Walker, kind of those big standards, and those are definitely coming straight from J.W. Pepper. So we are going to be at a large United Methodist church in Towson, and finding a venue without having a concrete ensemble size was hugely challenging because we hadn't yet opened registration. It's kind of that, catch 22.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we found a venue that we felt would be flexible enough for whatever this turned out to look like. And it's also been really important to have a venue that has a designated staff event coordinator because we have a lot of questions. And it's just been really nice to have someone super responsive at the church.
So what are the financial implications of something like this? Are the singers paying dues? Are they paying for their music? It sounds like the president did some fundraising. Walk me through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we officially incorporated last May, and our first festival is coming up later this month. So we spent a long careful on ramp. That was one of those places where the board had to say, no, we can't do a festival 2 months after incorporating. I know you're excited, but calm down. um, so during that time, we had done some kind of crowdfunding type campaign. We had a very generous matching gift. And in the winter, we had a strong push centering around Giving Tuesday that was successful in helping us raise enough money to book a venue. So we booked the venue, we opened registration, members pay dues, which includes the purchase of their music. In order to keep costs reasonable, I was a little bit strategic with selecting some things that were public domain. One of the big factors was that we ask people to print their own music or let us know if they need their music to be printed and mailed to them. That additional cost was something that I think we'll look at maybe having a payment cover that postage just because it's 10 pieces of music.
Funny, just sort of as an aside, when you go online to order some of these pieces and you see that it's can be electronically downloaded, you think, oh, great, now I don't have to pay for shipping. But if you have 90 singers and you're promising hard copies to all 90 of those singers, shipping is way cheaper. You know,
Mhm.
I think that is something that folks have to consider, unless you know that all your singers have a tablet or something of that sort to download the music on for use and performance. It's going to be money out of your extra money out of your pocket for sure.
Yes. Yeah. I would say about 75% of the choir has either printed it on their own or plans to use an iPad. So, um, It's about 25%, maybe a little bit under. Which is a good number to have, and that's definitely one of those data points we're going to keep an eye on. Um, just with the logistics of getting things into people's hands. Registration closed 2 months out from the performance. Um, so we wanted to be guaranteed people would have at least 2 months with the music, and we would have 2 months with a definite number um, to plan. So it was kind of this mutually beneficial decision. Initially, we had planned to close earlier, but we were just gaining so much interest and traction. We wanted to kind of let that tail die down a little bit more. Um, so the dues include the music and a meal. Um, and that's one of the unexpected things in our recruitment period. So I should mention I have a pretty extensive arts marketing background. So that's kind of been the other duties as assigned that I've been taking on. And so I'd been getting questions about repertoire, and so I thought, okay, I'll just like make a cute graphic, share what we're going to be singing. And we saw a really steep boost in registration because people saw the repertoire and thought, oh, I've sung that. I've heard that. I like that piece. So I think it kind of demystified it and made it feel a little bit more accessible. So that's something I'm going to work in earlier.
Almost like a marketing tool, like not intentionally, but yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, again, I'm not a details person. So tell people when the date's going to be and they say, "Oh, what are we singing?" I'm like, "Oh, worst." But yeah, usually I steal things from other choirs I'm working with so that, Rob Peter Pay Paul sort of situation. Oh, Rachel.
I mean, that's if anyone is thinking about starting this, I think that's the biggest thing I did to set myself up for success. Half the program is repertoire I've conducted within the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And our accompanist is the same accompanist I use in my other community chorus. So we have not only a great relationship, but she also already knows half the music. So,
What will the day look like for
oh
you?
yes, yeah. So the schedule of the day, it's a long day. We make no bones about that. We'll start with registration and check-in at 8 a.m. and then our morning rehearsal kicks off at 9. I'm planning to have about 30 minutes with each piece of music, and we'll break for lunch, and then we have an afternoon session and then an hour and a half long break for dinner and to give folks a chance to change. And there's space at the church for that to happen. We
Another to take into consideration when you're looking for a venue.
Yes, I've been on the other side of that and it's no fun.
No.
Um, Something that I think is a surprise logistical solution, we were able to engage a couple of food trucks to come for the dinner break. So we're providing lunch, and then dinner will be an option will be the food trucks. There's also plenty of restaurants around the area. People are welcome to bring food. We have space to store like refrigerated items for people. So then we come back after dinner, present the public performance, which will be about an hour long, and then we'll have a punch and cookies reception, and then call it a day.
So cool. And this is on a Saturday?
Yes,
Great. What time will the concert be? 7?
7:30.
I am unashamedly the person who's always trying to think of innovative ways of getting people in the door. Because I want the world to know how amazing choir is. And I think everybody should be at every concert that I'm part of because I think it's that amazing. So, what types of things are you all doing to get people in the door
In the audience or as a member of the choir?
in the audience?
Well, that is our current our current challenge, we are shifting very heavily into marketing for the audience. Our performance is free. We're taking a Goodwill offering and we're collecting canned goods for the church's food pantry at the door. So um, we've been sharing to community Facebook groups. In this area, there's a lot of event calendars, some specifically for free events. I've also been reaching out directly to music departments and just sending invitations. Something I'm really passionate about is demonstrating to high school age kids, college age kids, that you can do this as an adult and it doesn't have to be your whole life. It can be a fun, almost casual part of your life. So, reaching out directly to local music departments, music studios. We've been doing outreach at um, like music and arts, different lesson facilities. We'll be running some social media ads. I've been reaching out to local publications, just kind of hitting it all, and then I'm keeping a close eye on where traction is coming from. We are asking people to reserve free tickets, so we have um, a little bit of an audience base built in. And then hopefully in future seasons, we'll be able to see, okay, we kind of did everything this time. Let's see, did something work really well? We're obviously working on a shoestring budget for this performance, but if we were to up the budget for the next one, where would be best served with that money? So after this first performance, we will be in a better place to apply for grants. So we've also been documenting meticulously. We've reached out, or we work with someone who does grant writing professionally and is a member of the festival choir. And so she's been really great with kind of preparing us to submit a strong application. Obviously, grant funding is volatile at best. So it's, just the record keeping to prepare ourselves for that has also been really important. And it's a lot easier to just write everything down. Even before we had an official bylaw organization, we were taking meeting minutes and just we started a Google Drive immediately and just tracked everything.
Well, and that's one of the, I think that that's the beauty of community singing. We call it amateur singing, whatever you want to call. A lot of these people are not amateurs. Most likely they're professional musicians. At least that's in my case. Most of the people in my group are music teachers that just they want an outlet to be able to sing again. They don't have time, to
Hmm.
have, like you said, a 2 hour rehearsal because they're running their own 2 hour rehearsals in the evening.
Yeah,
Um, but what I have found is like roommates from college come and to be
yeah.
my choir, people that were in undergrad together, but have since, moved to different parts of the state, talk to each other. And the only time they get to see each other all year is when they're singing in my choir. So there's all these iterations of community building upon community building upon community, which is this secondary gift that
Hmm.
it's a non-musical gift, but I think that that's what will keep people coming back to something like this. It's not, it's not music for music's sakes necessarily.
Yeah. Right. And that's something my mindset going into it is realistic. We have 30 minutes with the piece. Is it going to be the world's most accurate performance of Hear My Prayer? Probably not. But it's this unique community that's coming together. One of my main inspirations was growing up, I had these friends I would only see at ACDA choir events. And we, from sixth grade through 12th grade, had this recurring touch point. And I'm still in touch with some of them today. It's so fun just to have these like people that enter and exit your life around a shared interest. So, yeah.
Well, and I think that too often, especially in music, we get so caught up with the end product and the level of success that we have with that end product that we forget about the process itself.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember our very first concert for the Threefold Chord Women's Choir that I direct. Our very first concert was in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And I mean, there were maybe 30 people there. It was not a sold out crowd, needless to say. But a woman that was at the concert came up to me afterwards weeping. She had just had a death in the family. She wasn't going to come to the concert, but she felt like she should. And it was the most meaningful thing that she'd been to. And she decided that night that she was going to start going back to church. And it was just like this monumental thing for her. And we didn't sing
Yeah.
all the notes right. And there were tons of hiccups. Um, but it was about that process, and she saw the the camaraderie and the appreciation for one another that all of the singers had. We didn't take
Yeah.
ourselves too seriously, and I think that's that's my own soapbox for a lot of, I don't even want to call it professional level choirs, but choirs that, all states and these things that we put up on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
Where sometimes the most genuine example of what choir truly is just these folks that want to gather with no presuppositions to sing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think it will be because you've gone into it a with a good idea of what it's meant to you.
Yeah. I appreciate you recognizing that because um I push my weekly community course pretty hard, and I have really high expectations for things like accuracy in notes, and um I think it's also a really great exercise for me as a conductor.
So what advice would you give to folks that find themselves in a similar position that would like to start a choir like this, using that festival model in particular?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me was finding a team I could trust so early in the process. Um, it's a lot of logistical work, and because of the festival model, it feels very much like you said, shooting into the dark, and then I get to find out, 9 months later if it landed on target. So, just finding a team that I could be really open about those anxieties with and talk through the concerns. And it was also really crucial for us to celebrate every single win, whether it was finally completing that IRS form, getting our exemption number, officially submitting our bylaws for the first time. We just really gave ourselves all these little moments of celebration, and that just kept us going until we could actually start seeing people be excited about it as well. And I think without that, it would have been so easy to get lost in all of the logistics because it's a lot. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of paperwork, but then you get to the part where it's people and music, and then it's worth it.
What's the date?
March 22nd,
22nd at 7:30 p.m. at what's the name of the church?
Towson United Methodist.
Okay, in Towson, Maryland. Great. And what are you most looking forward to?
Um, we are doing the Dona Nobis Pacem round, and we're going to integrate the audience into it. So it'll be kind of an audience sing along. Um, I get emotional every time I think about it. I will have multiple generations of my family there. I know the same will be for others. And I'm specifically really looking forward to hearing the entire room full of that piece, and in the culmination of getting to know all of these people together, I think it'll be really special.
I'm thankful for Sandra coming on the video podcast today, for being my first of what will hopefully be many of these video podcasts. If you have any questions about the Harmonia Festival Choir, be sure to check out their website. I'm sure that she would love to have some of you that are tuning into this to participate in their next session, which will be this fall. And as always, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share. Until next time.